January of 34, coldest winter in living memory, and I was watching my mama burn Daddy's work boots just to keep the stove lit. That's when the lawyer knocked. Some city fella in a wool coat that cost more than we'd seen in 6 months, bringing news that'd either save us or kill us. We'd inherited 40 acres of frozen hell called Dead Man's Hollow from an uncle we never knew existed. Folks in town said that lake was cursed, said it swallowed men whole and gave nothing back but grief. But my mama, Clara Harlow, she was desperate enough to take a curse if it meant keeping her boy fed through winter. What we found under that ice was worth $2 million in Confederate gold. But some fortunes come with a body count, and the men who wanted it had guns and lawyers and 40 years of searching behind them. By dawn, we'd either pull that treasure from the frozen deep, or Marcus Cromwell would bury us right alongside it. 3 months before that lawyer knocked, I was standing in the charity line outside First Methodist Church with my mama, watching her pride die right there on Main Street, Charleston, West Virginia, January 1934. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache just breathing. Coal dust had turned the snow the color of old bruises, and the line of folks waiting for handout baskets stretched clear around the block. Every one of them, someone Mama knew from before Daddy died in the mine collapse, before we lost our company house, before we ended up in that freezing apartment above Murphy's Diner with nothing but 13 cents and a pile of overdue notices. Mrs. Etta Mae Perkins was handing out the charity that day, same woman who used to buy Mama's preserves at the church bazaar back when we had money for such things. She stood behind that folding table like it was a throne, deciding who was deserving and who wasn't. "Clara Harlow," she said when we got to the front, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I see you're wearing your Sunday coat. Can't be that desperate if you still got decent clothes." Mama's hand tightened on mine. I was 7, but I knew shame when I saw it crossing her face. "This coat belonged to David's mother, ma'am," Mama said quiet-like. "It's all I got against the cold." "Well?" Mrs. Perkins looked Mama up and down like she was inspecting livestock. "The charity committee's been hearing things. That you turned down work at the Cromwell house. Mrs. Cromwell herself offered you laundry service, and you refused." I felt Mama stiffen beside me. The Cromwell house, where the mine owner lived, same mine that killed my daddy 'cause they skimped on timber supports to save money. "I got work at the clinic, ma'am. Evening shift in the laundry there." "Part-time work," Mrs. Perkins sniffed. "Choosin' beggin' can't be choosers, Clara. The good Lord helps those who help themselves, and pride is a sin, same as any other." Folks in line were staring now. Some I recognized. Daddy's old crew members, their wives, families who'd been to our house for Sunday dinner back when we could afford to feed guests. Now they watched Mama get dressed down in public, and not one of them said a word. "My boy needs boots," Mama said, and I could hear something breaking in her voice. "His toes are sticking through. I just need—" "What you need is to accept honest work when it's offered." Mrs. Perkins pushed a small basket across the table, half the size of what she'd given the woman before us. "This is all we can spare for the undeserving poor. Next time, maybe you'll remember your place." I looked up at Mama's face and saw tears freezing on her cheeks. She took that basket without another word, and we turned to leave. That's when I saw him. Boy about my age, standing with his mama near the back of the line. But something was wrong with his legs. Twisted funny, braces on both of them, leaning heavy on his mama's arm just to stand. His coat was too thin, and I could see him shaking from cold and the effort of standing. His mama looked worse than mine, dressed so patched it was more thread than fabric, no coat at all, just a shawl pulled tight. Her hands were red and cracked from washwork, and her face had that hollow look of someone who ain't eaten in days so her boy could— We got maybe 10 steps when I heard Mrs. Perkins's voice again, sharp as January wind. "Rebecca Walsh, you can just turn yourself around right now. This is for church members in good standing, and everyone knows your boy's affliction is God's judgment on your sin. A widow woman with a crippled child? That's the Lord's way of marking wickedness." The boy's mama, Rebecca, she didn't say nothing, just stood there taking it, one arm around her son who couldn't hardly walk, the other clutching that threadbare shawl. But the boy, he looked up at Mrs. Perkins with eyes that understood every word, understood exactly what she was saying about him. 7 years old, and he knew folks thought he was God's punishment. Mama stopped walking. I felt her whole body go still. "Mrs. Perkins," Mama said, turning back, and her voice had something new in it now, something hard as the coal Daddy used to dig. "You got something to say about God's judgment?" The whole line went quiet. Mama walked back to that table, set down our charity basket, and looked Mrs. Perkins straight in the eye. "Then judge this. Any God worth believing in don't punish children for being born, and any woman who'd use his name to justify cruelty ain't fit to speak it." She turned to Rebecca and her boy. "Come on, honey. You and your son are coming home with us." Mrs. Perkins' face went purple. "Clara Harlow, if you walk away from this charity, don't you dare come crawling back." "Won't need to," Mama said. "We'll manage just fine." And she took Rebecca's arm, I took the boy's hand, and we walked away from that line together, heads up, while the whole town watched. We had 13 cents, no food, no fuel, and now we had 2 more mouths that needed feeding. But Mama's face, for the first time since Daddy died, she looked like herself again. We were halfway down Main Street when I heard the whispers starting behind us. By sundown, the whole town would know Clara Harlow had chosen prideful defiance over Christian charity. And by dawn, our landlord would be knocking with an eviction notice, 'cause Mrs. Perkins's husband owned half the buildings in Charleston, and charity ain't free when you spit in its face. The drive to Dead Man's Hollow took 4 hours through snow that kept getting deeper. Rebecca sat in back with Timothy, both of them silent as ghosts, like they couldn't quite believe someone had chosen them over a whole town's approval. I kept turning around to look at Timothy. He'd catch my eye and give me a small smile, but mostly he just stared out the window at the passing mountains, his twisted legs tucked awkward beneath him. When we finally pulled up to that sagging cabin, Rebecca's face went white. "Mrs. Harlow, we can't impose like this. You don't even know us, and this place, it's shelter," Mama said firm. "And it's ours. That makes it yours too, long as you need it." Thompson helped us unload what little we had, then tipped his hat. "Good luck, Mrs. Harlow. You're gonna need it." We watched his automobile disappear down the mountain, and then it was just the 4 of us standing in front of a cabin that looked like it might collapse if you sneezed too hard. First thing Mama did was get the stove working. Took her 2 hours of cursing and banging, but finally she got a fire going that actually put out heat. Rebecca tried to help, but her fever made her weak as a kitten, so Mama sent her to bed in Jasper's old room with every blanket we could find. That left me and Timothy in the main room while Mama cooked the last of our supplies. Half a cup of cornmeal turned into mush, stretched thin with water. 4 bowls, barely enough to call it supper. "Ain't much," Mama said, setting the bowls on the floor since we'd already burned the kitchen table for warmth. "But it's something." Timothy looked at his bowl like it was a feast. "It's more than we had yesterday, ma'am. Mama and I, we've been, well, we've been going without for a spell." I could see it too. How thin he was under that ragged coat. How his cheekbones stuck out sharp. How his hands trembled when he lifted the spoon. "Eat slow," Mama warned gentle. "Your stomach ain't used to much. Don't want you getting sick." We ate in silence, just the sound of the fire crackling and the wind moaning through gaps in the walls. Outside, I could hear the lake, ice creaking and shifting like something alive. After supper, Timothy asked if he could look around. Mama nodded, and I watched him drag himself across the floor, his legs near useless but his arms strong from compensating. He pulled himself up to the window and stared out at the frozen lake. "It's talking," he said quiet. "What's that, honey?" Mama asked. "The water. It's talking to me." He pressed his hand against the cold glass. "There's things down there, old things, secret things. They've been waiting a long time to be found." Mama and I exchanged glances. I'd felt it too, that pull from the lake, but I'd thought it was just my imagination. "What kind of things?" I asked. Timothy turned to look at me, and his eyes had that distant quality, like he was seeing through me to something beyond. Important things, things that'll change everything, but also dangerous things. Bad men want 'em. Have wanted 'em for a long, long time. Before Mama could respond, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, fever flushed, but steady enough to stand. Timothy's always been like this, she said soft. Since the polio, doctors said the fever touched his brain, made him see things that ain't there. But I think maybe he just sees things other folks miss. Mama studied Timothy with new eyes. What else does the lake tell you? That someone used to live here, a man who searched for the secret things his whole life, and that bad men are coming. Soon. Timothy's small hand pressed harder against the glass. They've been watching this place for a long time, waiting, and now that we're here, they'll come. That night, I woke to voices outside. Not loud, just murmurs carried on the wind, men talking low like they didn't want to be heard. I crept to the window and saw 'em, three figures moving through the trees with flashlights, circling the cabin like wolves around a kill. They didn't come to the door, just walked the perimeter, taking their time, making sure we knew they were there. In the morning, Mama found their message, boot prints in the snow, dozens of 'em, all around the cabin, and carved into the bark of the big oak by the porch, fresh cuts, still oozing sap. Gray Rock's dead. You're next. Mama stood there staring at those words, her breath coming out in white clouds, her hands balled into fists. Rebecca came out wrapped in her shawl, saw the carving, and went pale. Mrs. Harlow, maybe we should leave. Go back to Charleston. This ain't our fight, and we're just making things worse for you. No, Mama's voice was hard as the frozen ground. We ain't running. Not from them, not from anybody. But Clara, if they killed Jasper, then they'll have to kill me too. Mama turned to face us, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not fear, but fury. Pure, righteous fury. I'm done bending to bullies, done letting folks with money and power decide who deserves to live and who don't. We got a right to be here. We got a right to survive, and I'll be damned if I let 'em take that from us. Timothy dragged himself to the porch edge, looked at the carving, then at Mama. Mrs. Harlow, the lake says you're the right one. Says you got the strength to find what's hidden and do right by it. That's why the bad men are scared. I ain't scared of them, Mama said. I know, Timothy replied. That's what scares 'em most. That afternoon, while Mama was checking Rebecca's fever, I snuck down to the lake edge. The ice was solid near shore, and I could see down through it, 8, maybe 10 feet to the murky bottom. And there, just like in my dreams, I saw it. Something metal, square-shaped, big as a trunk. I was staring at it so hard I didn't hear the truck pull up. Didn't hear the men get out. Didn't hear nothing till a hand grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. 3 men stood there, rough-looking fellas in work clothes, one of 'em holding a rifle loose at his side. The one gripping my shoulder had a face like weathered leather and eyes cold as the lake. You the Harlow boy? He growled. I nodded, too scared to speak. You tell your mama something for me. Tell her Marcus Cromwell's coming to visit tomorrow. Tell her he's got a business proposition and it'd be in her best interest to hear him out. He squeezed my shoulder hard enough to hurt. Tell her refusing ain't an option. Not if she wants to keep breathing. Understand? I nodded again. He shoved me toward the cabin. Good. Now get inside and stay away from that lake. What's down there don't belong to you. I ran back to the cabin, legs shaking, heart pounding. Mama took one look at my face and knew. What happened? Men, I gasped. By the lake. They said Marcus Cromwell's coming tomorrow. Said you got to listen to his proposition. Said refusing ain't an option. Mama's jaw set hard. She walked to where Jasper's shotgun leaned against the wall, checked it was loaded, then set it by the door. Let him come, she said quiet. We'll hear what he's got to say. And then, Rebecca whispered, and then we'll tell him to go to hell. Outside, the temperature was dropping fast. Inside, we huddled around the dying fire, waiting for morning, waiting for Marcus Cromwell, waiting to see if Mama's courage would be enough to keep us alive, or if we'd end up like Jasper. Just another mystery buried under the ice of Dead Man's Hollow. Timothy pressed his face to the window, staring at the lake. They're scared, he whispered. The bad men. They've been searching so long, and now someone else is close to finding it. That makes them desperate, and desperate men do terrible things. Mama pulled us all close, me, Timothy, Rebecca, wrapped us in her arms like she could protect us from what was coming. But we all knew the truth. Come tomorrow, protection wouldn't be enough. We'd need a miracle, or we'd need to fight. The eviction notice came at dawn, just like I knew it would. But it wasn't the landlord who delivered it, it was Sheriff Tom Bradley himself, stamping snow off his boots on our doorstep, hat in hand, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on God's frozen earth. Clara, he said, not meeting Mama's eyes. I got papers here. You got till noon to clear out. Mama stood in the doorway. Rebecca and her boy, Timothy, we'd learned his name was, huddled behind her in the cold apartment. We'd shared our last can of beans for breakfast. 13 cents don't buy much hope. Noon, Mama repeated, voice flat. That's 4 hours, Tom. I know it. Sheriff Bradley shifted his weight. Look, Clara, Mrs. Perkins' husband owns this building, and after yesterday, after what you said at the church, after I told the truth about how they treat folks, after you made enemies of the only people in this town with money to spare, he finally looked at her. Where you gonna go, Clara? You got no kin here, no savings, and now you got that Walsh woman and her boy to feed too. I watched Mama's jaw set hard, same look she'd had when she told Mrs. Perkins off. We'll manage. How? Sheriff Bradley's voice dropped low. How you gonna manage with no roof, no food, and winter getting colder? Be reasonable, woman. Go apologize to Mrs. Perkins, take whatever work the Cromwells are offering, and maybe work for the family that killed my husband? Mama's voice could have cut glass. Watch my boy grow up serving the people who valued profit over David's life? Better than watching him freeze to death in some ditch. The words hung there between 'em, cold as the January wind sneaking through the doorframe. That's when Rebecca spoke up, voice barely above a whisper. It's my fault. I'll leave. You apologize, Mrs. Harlow. Say I tricked you or something. You and your boy don't need to suffer for— Hush, Mama said, not unkind. Nobody's apologizing for telling the truth. Sheriff Bradley put his hat back on. Then you got till noon. I'm sorry, Clara. I truly am. By 11 o'clock, we had our things, what little there was, piled on the sidewalk. Folks walked past without looking like poverty might be catchin'. A few whispered, pointin'. One woman I recognized from church actually spit in the snow near our feet. Timothy sat on our one suitcase, his twisted legs sticking out at odd angles, while Rebecca tried to keep him warm with that threadbare shawl. Mama stood there counting our 13 cents again, like maybe this time the number would be different. That's when the crowd started gathering, not to help, to witness. Mrs. Perkins herself showed up, standing across the street with her husband, fat man in an expensive coat, chomping on a cigar like this was entertainment. Maybe 20, 30 people gathered, and I could feel their judgment like heat from a stove. There she is, someone said, Clara Harlow, too proud for honest work. Choosing to starve rather than admit she was wrong, and dragging that Walsh woman and her crippled boy down with her. Mama's hands were shaken, but not from cold. From rage she was holding back for my sake, for Timothy's sake. Clara Harlow, Mrs. Perkins's voice rang out. You ready to apologize now? Ready to admit your prideful ways? The crowd went quiet, waiting. I looked up at Mama, saw something break behind her eyes. Not her spirit, but something else. Like she was seeing real clear for the first time what this town was made of, who these people really were. She opened her mouth to speak. That's when the black automobile rolled up, expensive thing that didn't belong on our street. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and out stepped a man in a suit finer than anything we'd ever seen. Lawyer Thompson, though we didn't know his name yet. He walked straight to Mama, pulled an envelope from his briefcase. Mrs. Clara Harlow? Yes? I represent the estate of Jasper Grayrock, recently deceased. You've inherited property in Hancock County, 43 acres including a lake called Dead Man's Hollow. The crowd murmured. Mrs. Perkins' face went sour as spoiled milk. Mama stared at the papers like they might bite. I don't understand. I never heard of your late husband's uncle. No other living relatives. The property's yours, Mrs. Harlow. Thompson glanced at our belongings on the sidewalk, at the gathered crowd, and something like sympathy crossed his face. I should mention, it's not worth much. Been on the market 20 years, no buyers. Local reputation makes it difficult to sell, but it's shelter, and it's yours. Mama looked at those eviction papers in one hand, inheritance papers in the other. Then she looked at Mrs. Perkins across the street, at the crowd that had come to watch her grovel. When can we leave? Mama asked. Thompson blinked. Well, the roads are difficult in this weather, and you'd need to arrange. We'll leave today. She turned to Rebecca. You and Timothy, too. We're done with this town. Mrs. Perkins stepped forward. Clara Harlow, you walk away now. You'll never— Never what? Mama's voice cut through the cold air. Never be welcomed by folks who'd let children starve to teach their mamas a lesson. Never be part of a community that measures worth by who you serve and how low you bow. I'll take that trade, Etta May. I'll take it gladly. She picked up our suitcase with one hand, took my hand with the other. Come on, baby. We're going home. Thompson looked between Mama and the crowd, then did something unexpected. He smiled. I'll drive you. My automobile's more comfortable than the bus and, well, I'd like to see you settled. As we loaded into that fine automobile, me, Mama, Rebecca, and Timothy, I looked back at the crowd. Some looked angry, some looked ashamed, but most just looked away. We drove out of Charleston through snow-covered streets, heading toward mountains I'd never seen, toward a lake nobody wanted, toward a future that was probably worse than what we were leaving. But Mama sat straight in that automobile seat, head high, and for the first time in months, I saw something like hope in her eyes. Even if that hope was just 40 acres of frozen hell and a lake that folks said was cursed, sometimes that's enough. The car wound higher into the mountains, snow getting deeper, civilization getting farther behind. Timothy fell asleep against his mama, and Mama held my hand tight. Mrs. Harlow, Thompson said from the front seat, I should warn you, there are complications with this property. Others who believe they have claim to it. A family named Cromwell. Mama's laugh was sharp and bitter. Of course it's the Cromwells. Of course it is. They've been searching for something on that land for generations. I felt you should know before we arrive. They might not take kindly to your inheritance. In the rearview mirror, I saw Thompson's eyes meet Mama's. Let them come, Mama said quietly. We ain't got nothing left to lose. Dead Man's Hollow was worse than Thompson had warned. The cabin stood leaning like a drunk against the winter wind, windows dark as empty eye sockets, roof sagging under snow that hadn't been cleared in weeks. The lake stretched out behind it, frozen solid except for one patch of dark water near the center that wouldn't freeze no matter how cold it got. Local folks said that's where the bodies went down during the mining accident, said the water there was cursed to stay open, waiting for more dead. But it was shelter, and it was ours. Thompson helped us unload, then stood by his automobile looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Harlow, there's a town about 20 miles down the mountain, Fairmont. General store, post office. If you need anything, we'll manage, Mama said. Same words she'd been saying since Charleston. He nodded, started to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Jasper Grayrock died 3 weeks ago in a car accident. Ice storm, they said. Lost control on the mountain road. He paused. But Jasper'd been driving these roads for 40 years, knew every curve in his sleep. Mama's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful, and lock your doors at night. We watched his taillights disappear down the mountain road, and then we were alone. First week, we made do. Mama got the stove working, and we burned what little firewood Jasper had left stacked. Rebecca cleaned, while Mama patched holes in the roof with tar paper and prayer. Timothy explored the cabin despite his twisted legs, dragging himself from room to room, discovering Jasper's things, old books about mining, geology surveys, maps with strange markings. And me, I couldn't stop staring at that lake. Something about it pulled at me, like it was calling my name in a voice only I could hear. The ice was thick enough to walk on near the shore, but that dark patch in the middle, it seemed to move sometimes, like something was swimming underneath. Stay away from that water, Mama warned. Ice ain't trustworthy, and neither is that lake. But the lake wasn't the only thing that wasn't trustworthy. Fifth night there, I woke to dogs barking in the distance. Not the friendly kind of barking, the kind that says strangers are coming, danger's approaching. I looked out the window and saw nothing but darkness and snow. But in the morning, there were boot prints circling the cabin. Big ones. At least 3 different sets. Mama saw 'em too. Didn't say nothing, just started keeping the shotgun Jasper left loaded by the door. Seventh night, the temperature dropped so low the nails in the walls were cracking. We were burning furniture to stay warm. Jasper's old chair, then a bookshelf, then the kitchen table. Rebecca was sick with fever, and Timothy's legs were hurting him something fierce from the cold. That's when I found it, hidden under a loose floorboard in Jasper's bedroom, a metal box, sealed tight. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, every page filled with Jasper's careful handwriting. 40 years of notes about the lake, about searching for something he called Morrison's cache. And on the last page, dated 3 days before he died, Marcus Cromwell came again today. Brought 2 men, not a friendly visit. They know I'm close to finding it. Gave me 2 weeks to come to reasonable arrangement or they'll take steps. Starting to think this inheritance might be more dangerous than valuable. Maybe I should destroy everything, let the secret die with me. I showed Mama. She read it by lamplight, her face getting harder with each word. The Cromwells, she said quiet. Always the damn Cromwells. That night, around midnight, I heard it. A car engine idling somewhere in the dark, not coming closer, just waiting, watching. After 10 minutes, it drove away. But the next morning, nailed to our door, we found a note. Words cut from newspaper like a ransom letter. The gold belongs to Cromwell. Leave before you join Jasper. Mama tore it down, hands shaking with rage more than fear. We ain't leaving, she said to the empty air, to whoever was watching from the trees. You hear me? We ain't going nowhere. That afternoon, while Mama was tending to Rebecca's fever and Timothy was asleep, I did something stupid. I walked out onto that frozen lake. The ice held near the shore, creaking but solid. I walked 20 feet, 30, following some pull I couldn't name. The dark patch of open water was still 50 yards away, but I could feel heat coming from it. Not natural heat, but something else. That's when I saw it. Through the clear ice beneath my feet, maybe 8 feet down, I could see something metal, square-shaped, big as a suitcase, a chest. Just like in Jasper's journal, Morrison's cache. Elias, Mama's voice, sharp with fear. Get off that ice right now. I turned to run back, and that's when I heard it, a crack like a gunshot. The ice beneath my feet spidering out in every direction. I was falling before I could scream. The black water reaching up to swallow me whole, cold as death and twice as hungry. The last thing I saw before going under was Mama running toward me across the ice, and behind her, coming down the mountain road, a line of headlights. 5 vehicles at least, maybe more. The Cromwells were coming. And I was drowning in the same cursed water that had swallowed men 100 years before. The water was so cold it felt like fire. I was sinking lungs, screaming for air I couldn't give 'em. The dark closing in from all sides. Through the murk, I could see that metal chest just below me, tantalizing close, but might as well been on the moon. Then hands grabbed me. Mama's hands, strong as iron despite the cold. She jumped in after me without hesitation, and now she was pulling me up toward the light, toward the jagged hole in the ice where I'd fallen through. We broke surface together, gasping, and somehow, God only knows how, she got us both out onto solid ice. We crawled on our bellies toward shore, the ice groaning beneath us, and didn't stop crawling till we hit frozen mud. Rebecca was there, pulling us into the cabin despite her fever, stripping our wet clothes, wrapping us in every blanket we had. Timothy fed the stove with the last of Jasper's chair, his twisted hands shaking as he worked, and through the window, we watched those headlights come closer. 5 trucks pulled up to our cabin just as the sun was setting. Men climbed out, maybe 15 of them, led by a tall man in an expensive coat that didn't belong in these mountains. Marcus Cromwell. Had to be, but he didn't come to the door. Not yet. His men just waited. Stood there in the snowfall, watching our cabin, making sure we knew they could reach us any time they wanted. After an hour, they left, but the message was clear. We know you're here, we're watching, and you got nowhere to run. That night, huddled around the dying stove, Mama held me close. I was still shaken though, whether from cold or fear I couldn't say. I saw it, Mama. I whispered. The chest. It's real. Everything Jasper wrote about, it's down there. I know, baby. She stroked my hair. But it ain't worth drowning for. Across the cabin, Rebecca sat with Timothy, checking his legs by lamplight. The cold had made him worse, swollen, painful. He bit his lip to keep from crying out when she touched him. Let me see, Mama said, gentle. She knew nursing from her time at the clinic. Rebecca hesitated, then nodded. Mama crossed to him, knelt down, and examined Timothy's twisted limbs with careful hands. Polio? She asked quiet. When he was 3, Rebecca whispered. Doctors said he'd never walk. But he tries. Lord, how he tries. Mama looked at the boy, and something passed between them, some recognition. Timothy met her eyes without shame, without the flinch he'd had when Mrs. Perkins called him God's judgment. You're a fighter, Mama said to him, just like my Elias. Timothy's face broke into a smile, first real one I'd seen from him. Mrs. Harlow, he said, voice soft. Can I tell you something? Course you can. I've been drawing maps of the lake. I can't explain it, but I can feel where things are, under the ice, like the water's talking to me. Mama went still. What kind of things? Metal things, old things, important things. He pulled out a piece of paper. He'd drawn the lake from memory, marked spots with X's. Right here, and specially here, something big's buried, something that's been waiting a long time to be found. I looked at his map, then at Mama. It matches where I saw the chest. Exactly. Mama studied that paper for a long time, then looked at Timothy with new eyes. You got the sight, don't you? Like my boy. Rebecca's breath caught. You believe him. Folks back in Charleston said he was touched in the head, that the fever made him see true, Mama interrupted. Some folks got eyes for what's buried, what's hidden. My Elias has it. Your Timothy has it. She touched the boy's shoulder, gentle-like. And right now, that gift might be the only thing keeping us alive. Next morning, there was a knock at the door. Not Cromwell, a woman, elderly, dressed in worn but clean clothes. She introduced herself as Martha Hendress, the librarian from Fairmont. Heard you inherited Jasper's place, she said, stepping inside without invitation. Thought you might need this. She handed Mama an envelope. Inside was a legal document, notarized and official. Jasper gave this to me 2 weeks before he died, Martha explained. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure his heir got it. It's a trust document, establishes that any treasure found on this property belongs to the landowner by right of mountain law. Mama stared at the paper. Mountain law? Old tradition in these parts, goes back to the 1800s. What winter hides, spring reveals to its finder. It's in the county records, supersedes mining claims and corporate interests. Jasper researched it for years, made sure it was ironclad. Martha's eyes were sharp. He knew the Cromwells would come. He prepared for it. Mama's hands trembled as she read. This means legally, anything you find here is yours. Cromwell can threaten all he wants, but the law's on your side. Martha paused. There's something else. Jasper and I were friends, good friends. He told me about Morrison's cash, about the Confederate gold, about how the Cromwells have been searching for it for generations. Why? Mama asked. Why do they want it so bad? Martha's face went grim. Because they ain't just treasure hunters, Mrs. Harlow. The Cromwell family runs something called the Southern Heritage Foundation. They've been collecting Confederate artifacts for decades. Flags, uniforms, documents. They want to build a museum, a cultural center dedicated to what they call true Southern history. She spat the words like poison. They want to use that gold to fund monuments and exhibits that paint the Confederacy as heroes, that call enslaved people workers, that teach children the war was about states' rights instead of slavery. The room went cold in a way that had nothing to do with winter. They want to buy history, Mama said slowly. Rewrite it. And Jasper knew it. That's why he never told him where the cash was, even when they threatened him. That's why he left this place to you, someone with no connection to their cause, Someone who might do the right thing with what's found. Mama looked at me, then at Timothy with his maps, then at Rebecca who'd been cast out for having a crippled son. We'll find it, Mama said. And when we do, it ain't going to no foundation that profits off lies. Martha nodded, satisfied. She headed for the door, then turned back. One more thing, Jasper's death wasn't no accident. Ice storm or not, I'd bet my life the Cromwells had a hand in it. So you be careful, Clara Harlow. They've killed once to protect their secret. They'll kill again. After she left, we sat in silence. Timothy spoke first, his child's voice cutting through the quiet. Mrs. Harlow, I had a dream last night about the man who used to live here, Jasper. He was scared, real scared. There were bad men coming, and he was hiding things so they wouldn't find him. But he wanted someone good to find him later. Someone like you. Mama pulled him close, pulled me close, pulled Rebecca close, till we were all hugging in that cold cabin. Then we'll find it, she whispered. For Jasper, for the truth, for all of us. That night I woke to the sound of vehicles again. But this time they didn't just idle and leave. This time they were cutting down trees across the road, blocking our only way out. And through the window, I saw Marcus Cromwell standing in the snow, watching our cabin, waiting for us to run out of food, out of fuel, out of hope. The siege had begun. We were trapped. 3 days the Cromwells kept us hemmed in, trees blocking the road, men patrolling the perimeter like we were prisoners in our own home. Our food was nearly gone, down to half a bag of cornmeal and some dried beans. The firewood was gone completely. We were burning Jasper's bed frame, his desk, anything that'd catch flame. Rebecca's fever had gotten worse. Timothy's legs were so swollen he couldn't move without crying. And Mama's hands were shaking from more than cold now, from fear she wouldn't admit to, from the weight of knowing we might all starve or freeze before spring thaw. Fourth morning, I woke to Mama standing at the window, staring out at the lake. Mama? That chest you saw, she said without turning. How deep was it? Maybe 8, 10 feet. And Timothy's maps, they show more than one cache? Yes'm, 3, maybe 4 spots. She was quiet a long spell. Then, if we're gonna die here anyway, might as well die trying to get what's ours. That's when we heard the gunshot. Single crack echoing across the frozen lake. We hit the floor instinctive-like, hearts racing. But no more shots came, just silence. Then the sound of someone pounding on our door. Mrs. Harlow, it's Sheriff Bradley. Open up! Mama crawled to the door, cracked it open with the shotgun ready. But Sheriff Bradley wasn't alone, and he wasn't there to arrest us. He had Marcus Cromwell with him, hands tied behind his back, blood dripping from his nose. 2 of Cromwell's men were on their knees in the snow, hands on their heads. And behind the sheriff stood a man I'd never seen before. Tall, lean, maybe 60 years old, wearing a worn suit and wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Harlow, Sheriff Bradley said, breathing hard like he'd been running. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. Roads were blocked, had to come in on horseback through the back trail. He shoved Cromwell forward. Found this one, and his boys cutting more trees, trapping you in. That's unlawful imprisonment, destruction of property, and about 6 other charges I can think of. Mama stared. Tom, what? I should have come sooner. The sheriff's jaw was set hard. Should have believed you when you called about the threats, but I got pressure from certain folks in town. Folks with money and influence. He looked at Cromwell with disgust. Didn't sit right with me, though. Been chewing on it for days. Then this gentleman showed up at my office. The tall man in glasses stepped forward. Mrs. Harlow, I'm Professor Raymond Dalton. I teach history at the community college in Fairmont. I was a friend of Jasper Greyrock. Mama's eyes narrowed. Friend? Then why didn't you help him when he needed it? Ray's face showed genuine pain. Because I didn't know the Cromwells had escalated to violence. Jasper and I had an arrangement. We were partners in searching for Morrison's cache. He provided the property access and historical research. I provided diving expertise and authentication. We agreed to split whatever we found, 50-50. So you want your cut, Mama said, voice hard. No, ma'am. Ray shook his head. When Jasper died, our partnership died with him. I got no legal claim to anything he discovered. But Jasper called me 2 weeks before his death. Said he'd found something important, wanted my opinion on how to handle it properly. We were supposed to meet the day after his accident. He pulled out a folder. I've been investigating ever since, and I'm certain Jasper's death was no accident. The Cromwells killed him to prevent him from recovering that treasure. Marcus Cromwell snarled through his bloody mouth. You can't prove... Sheriff Bradley slapped him upside the head. Shut it. You'll talk when we get you to the jailhouse. Ray continued. I brought everything I know to the sheriff yesterday. 40 years of research, Jasper's notes, evidence of Cromwell threats. Tom here decided the law matters more than money. Sheriff Bradley looked almost embarrassed. My daddy died in a Cromwell mine. Took me too long to remember that some things matter more than keeping the peace. He met Mama's eyes. I'm sorry, Clara, for doubting you. For taking so long to do what's right. Mama stood there speechless, still holding that shotgun. There's more, Ray said. Martha Hendress, the librarian, she's been digging through county records. Found documents proving the Cromwell family's historical claims are fraudulent. Their great-great-grandfather sold his partnership interest in the Morrison transport operation 6 months before the gold was hidden. They got no legal right to any of it. But that means... Mama's voice cracked. It means it's yours, Ray said simple. Every bit of it. And I'm here to help you recover it proper-like, if you'll have me. Not for profit, for Jasper's memory. To make sure what he spent 40 years searching for ends up in the right hands. Timothy spoke up from his corner, voice weak but clear. The treasure wants to be found, Mrs. Harlow. The lake's been telling me. It's tired of keeping secrets. Ray looked at the boy with something like wonder. Jasper mentioned that some folks had a sense for these things, a gift for finding what's hidden. Sheriff Bradley started hauling Cromwell toward his horse. I'll clear those trees from your road, Clara. Get you access to town again. But you should know, Marcus here ain't the only Cromwell. His cousin's already lawyering up, filing injunctions. This fight ain't over. Let 'em fight, Mama said, and there was steel in her voice now. We got the law on our side. We got truth on our side, and we got nothing left to lose. After the sheriff left with his prisoners, Ray helped us haul in firewood from Jasper's shed. Wood we didn't know existed, hidden under a tarp. While Mama got the stove roaring again, Ray sat with Timothy, studying his maps. Boy's got accuracy I've never seen, Ray murmured. If these locations are right, we're talking about multiple caches. Not just one chest, several. How much? Mama asked. Ray did some calculating. Based on Morrison's transport manifests, could be $2 million worth of Confederate gold, maybe more. The room went quiet, except for the crackling fire. $2 million, enough to never be hungry again. Enough to get Timothy real doctors, real treatment. Enough to build a life instead of just surviving. But that night, after everyone was asleep, I heard Mama crying quiet-like by the window. David, she whispered to the darkness, to my dead daddy's memory. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. They killed Jasper. They'll kill us too if we get in their way. I pretended to stay asleep, but I heard every word, and I understood. Mama wasn't just fighting for treasure anymore. She was fighting to prove we deserved to exist, to take up space in a world that kept trying to erase us. Morning came cold and clear. Ray was on the porch at first light, setting up equipment, metal detectors, diving gear, underwater cameras. Professional stuff that must have cost a fortune. Where'd you get all this? Mama asked. College archaeology department. Ray's smile was slight. Technically, this is research into local historical sites. I may have bent the truth a little about our specific objectives. Timothy dragged himself out to look at the gear, eyes wide with wonder. We're really gonna do it. Go down there and get the treasure? We're gonna try, Ray said. Then he looked at Mama serious. But I need to know, when we find it, what are you planning to do with it? Because the Smithsonian's gonna want it. So's the State Historical Society. And the Cromwells will fight any claim you make. Mama was quiet, thinking. Then she looked at me and Timothy, two boys who'd been told their whole lives they didn't matter, one way or another. Whatever we find, she said, it's gonna be used for truth, Not lies, not propaganda, real history, honest history. Even if it means giving most of it away. Ray nodded slow. Jasper would have liked that answer. That's when we heard it. Vehicles coming up the road again. Lots of them. But this time it wasn't Cromwell's. It was reporters. 3 newspaper trucks, 2 radio vans, all bearing down on our little cabin like locusts. Martha Hendress climbed out of the lead vehicle, grinning like a cat with cream. "Thought you might need some insurance," she called out. So I told every news outlet within 50 miles about the widow woman and her boy finding Confederate treasure while the Cromwells tried to steal it. They're mighty interested in the story. Mama stared at the crowd of reporters setting up cameras, pulling out notepads. "Now the whole state's watching," Martha said. "Let's see the Cromwells try anything with all these witnesses around." Ray laughed. First real laugh I'd heard from him. "Martha, you're a genius." "I'm a librarian," she corrected. Same thing. But that night, after the reporters left, after we'd told our story a dozen times to a dozen different papers, I found something that made my blood run cold. Another note slipped under our door while we were distracted. "Publicity won't save you. The gold is ours by blood right. You have until the thaw. Then we take what's ours, with or without your bodies in the way." I showed Mama. Her hands trembled as she read it. "The thaw," she whispered. "That's less than 2 weeks." Ray looked out at the lake, at the ice already starting to thin near the edges. "Then we better work fast," he said, "because once that ice breaks, whatever's down there becomes a whole lot harder to recover, and a whole lot easier for the Cromwells to steal." The thaw came early. 10 days after that final threat, the temperature jumped 20 degrees overnight. Ice that had been solid for months started cracking, moaning like a dying animal. We could hear it from inside the cabin, great groaning sounds as the lake woke from its winter sleep. Ray was frantic. "We need to move now, today. Once that ice goes, the current will shift everything on the bottom. We might lose the caches entirely." But we had bigger problems. Sheriff Bradley arrived at dawn with news that drained the blood from Mama's face. "Clara, the Cromwells filed an emergency injunction. Judge Morrison's holding a hearing this afternoon in Fairmont. You're required to appear, or they'll rule in absentia." "What kind of injunction?" Ray demanded. "They're claiming the mineral rights to this property were never legally transferred, saying Jasper's deed was fraudulent, that the land's been under Cromwell Mining Trust control since 1883. They've got lawyers from Charleston, documents, expert witnesses." The sheriff looked grim. "And they got Judge Morrison. He owes the Cromwells money from a bad business deal. This is going to be rigged from the start." Mama's jaw set hard. "Then we'll unrig it." The Fairmont courthouse was packed, not just with lawyers and court officials, but with folks from town, some supportive, most just curious to see how the Harlow woman would handle herself against the Cromwell's money and power. Martha Hendress sat in the front row, notebook ready. The reporters who'd swarmed our cabin filled the back rows, cameras flashing. Marcus Cromwell sat at the plaintiff's table with 3 expensive lawyers, his face still bruised from Sheriff Bradley's fist. His eyes found mine across the courtroom, and the hate in him was pure poison. Judge Catherine Morrison, a heavy-set woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair, called the court to order. Despite what the sheriff feared, she had sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is an emergency hearing regarding mineral rights and property ownership of the land known as Dead Man's Hollow," she announced. "Mr. Cromwell, present your case." The Cromwell lawyer stood, slick-haired man in a suit that cost more than our cabin. "Your Honor, the Cromwell family has maintained continuous mineral rights to this property since 1883, predating any subsequent land transfers. We have documentation proving—" "Let me see this documentation," Judge Morrison interrupted. The lawyer handed up a stack of papers. The judge read in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. "These documents establish a mining partnership between Samuel Cromwell and J. Amos Morrison in 1882, but I see no evidence of continuous ownership." She fixed the lawyer with a stare. "Where's the proof these rights weren't legally dissolved or sold?" The lawyer fumbled. "Well, Your Honor, the absence of dissolution documents suggests nothing." The judge turned to Mama. Mrs. Harlow, do you have representation? Mama stood. No, ma'am, can't afford it. Then you'll represent yourself. Do you have any documents refuting the Cromwell's claim? Martha Hendris shot to her feet. Your Honor, may I approach? I have county records that are pertinent. Judge Morrison nodded, and Martha brought forward a leather-bound ledger that looked older than the courthouse itself. This is the official county clerk's record from 1883, Martha explained. Page 247 shows that Samuel Cromwell sold his partnership interest in the Morrison Transport Company on April 15, 1883, 6 months before the alleged treasure was hidden at Dead Man's Hollow. The sale was witnessed, notarized, and recorded. Samuel Cromwell had no legal interest in any minerals or materials stored or concealed after that date. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison examined the ledger carefully. This appears authentic. Mr. Cromwell's lawyer, how do you respond? The lawyer was sweating now. Your Honor, even if the partnership was dissolved, our family maintains that the gold itself was stolen Cromwell property, hidden by Morrison without legal authority. So now you're claiming theft? The judge's eyebrow raised. That would make the treasure stolen goods, which means nobody has legal claim to it. It'd go to the state. Is that what you're arguing? The lawyer realized his mistake too late. No, Your Honor, I meant… Enough. Judge Morrison held up her hand. I've heard sufficient arguments, but there's another matter to address. She turned to Mama. Mrs. Harlow, are you aware of the Mountain Finders Law? Mama shook her head. No, ma'am. It's an old statute established in these counties during the mining boom of the 1870s. The law states, what winter conceals, spring reveals to its rightful finder. Any person who discovers abandoned property on land they legally own holds primary claim to said property, superseding all prior mineral rights or corporate interests. The judge leaned forward. The law was designed to prevent mining companies from claiming everything under the ground, allowing individual landowners to benefit from discoveries on their own property. Marcus Cromwell shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's an archaic statute, never enforced in modern… It's still law, Judge Morrison said coldly, and I'm inclined to enforce it. Mrs. Harlow legally inherited this property from Jasper Grayrock. If she discovers anything on that land, it's hers by right. She banged her gavel. Cromwell injunction denied. Mrs. Harlow retains all rights to her property and any discoveries thereon. The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for the doors. Martha Hendris was hugging Mama. Sheriff Bradley was grinning like a fool. And Marcus Cromwell looked like he wanted to murder every last one of us. But Judge Morrison wasn't finished. Mr. Cromwell, she said, voice cutting through the noise. I'm also granting Mrs. Harlow a restraining order against you and your associates. You're to stay at least 500 yards from Dead Man's Hollow at all times. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. She banged her gavel again. This court is adjourned. We were loading into Ray's truck when Marcus Cromwell caught up to us in the parking lot. This isn't over, Clara, he snarled. That gold belongs to my family. It's meant to preserve Southern heritage, to honor. To honor what? Mama spun on him. The Confederacy? Slavery? The idea that some folks are worth less than others because of the color of their skin or the circumstances of their birth? She stepped closer. I know what your foundation does, Marcus. I know the lies you want to spread with that money. They're not lies, they're… My husband died in your family's mine because you cut corners to save money, Mama said, voice trembling with rage. My son nearly starved because your family controls this whole county, and now you want Confederate gold to build monuments to the same system that treated human beings as property? She shook her head. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, Marcus said quiet, and there was murder in his eyes. Sheriff Bradley stepped between them. That sounds like a threat, Mr. Cromwell. Want me to add it to the restraining order? Marcus backed off, but his final words chilled me to the bone. The thaw's coming, Clara, and when that ice breaks, we'll see who's really in control. Law or no law, that gold is ours. By blood right, by heritage, by any means necessary. He walked away, and Mama sagged against the truck. We need to recover that treasure now, Ray said urgently. Today, before the ice goes completely. But the judge's order. We won, didn't we? I asked. Ray looked at me, and his face was grim. We won in court, son. But some men don't respect the law when it goes against what they want, and Marcus Cromwell's had generations to get comfortable with taking what he thinks is his. We drove back to Dead Man's Hollow in silence. When we arrived, the lake was singing, ice cracking and shifting as warm air worked its magic. The dark patch in the center had grown to twice its size. We had maybe 24 hours before the whole thing broke apart. Get the diving gear, Mama said. We're going down tonight. But as the sun set, we saw lights moving through the trees on the far side of the lake. Vehicles. Lots of them. The Cromwells were coming. And they weren't alone. I counted at least a dozen men, some carrying rifles, others hauling equipment toward the water's edge. Timothy grabbed my hand, his twisted fingers squeezing tight. Elias, the lake's scared. It's been hiding the treasure so long and now bad men are coming to take it. We gotta get it first. We gotta. Mama loaded Jasper's shotgun. Ray checked his diving equipment, and across that thinning ice, Marcus Cromwell stood watching our cabin, flashlight in one hand, rifle in the other. The race was on. And come dawn, only one side would walk away with $2 million in Confederate gold. The ice was singing its death song. We had maybe 6 hours before it broke apart completely. 6 hours to get down there, recover what we could, and get back before the Cromwells made their move. Ray was in the cabin preparing diving equipment while Mama kept watch at the window, Jasper's shotgun across her lap. That's when Sheriff Bradley's truck came barreling up the road, lights flashing. He jumped out, face white as the dying snow. Clara, we got a problem. A big one. What now? Judge Morrison just issued a new order. Emergency stay on all excavation activities pending further review. He handed her the paper, hands shaken. The Cromwells filed new evidence this afternoon, claims they got documents proving Jasper Greyrock's original deed was fraudulent, that he never legally owned this property at all. Mama stared at the court order. How is that possible? We just won. Because someone gave them ammunition. Sheriff Bradley looked sick. Someone with access to the county records. Someone who knew exactly which documents to alter and which ones to hide. Ray came out of the cabin, took one look at the sheriff's face and went pale. No. Tom, tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying. Martha Hendress was arrested an hour ago, the sheriff said quiet, for falsifying historical records and conspiracy to commit fraud. The world tilted sideways. Martha, our ally, the librarian who'd helped us, who'd produced the evidence that won our case. That's impossible, Mama whispered. She's been fighting the Cromwells for 40 years, Sheriff Bradley finished. Same amount of time Jasper was searching for that treasure, and the whole time she was feeding information to both sides, playing them against each other. Ray sank onto the porch steps like his legs wouldn't hold him. God, all this time, Martha was Jasper's friend, his confidant. She knew everything about his search. She knew too much, the sheriff said. We found her personal journals when we searched her house. Turns out Martha's grandmother was married to J.T. Morrison, the man who originally hid the treasure. Martha's been searching for it her whole life, using her position as librarian to control the information flow. She helped Jasper just enough to keep him searching, kept the Cromwells just frustrated enough to keep him interested, all while waiting for the perfect moment to claim it herself. I felt sick. But she gave us the Mountain Law document. She helped us win in court. Because she thought you'd lead her to the treasure, Sheriff Bradley explained. Once you found it, she planned to use some technicality, probably claiming Morrison family rights, to take it from you legally. But when the Cromwells escalated to violence, when things got dangerous, she got scared, started covering her tracks, made a deal with Marcus Cromwell. She'd provide evidence to overturn your claim in exchange for a cut of whatever they recovered. Mama's voice was ice. She betrayed us. After everything, she betrayed everyone, Ray said bitterly. Jasper trusted her completely, told her things he never told me, and she used every bit of it to manipulate the situation for her own benefit. He looked up at Mama. Those county records she showed us in court, some of them were real, but others, she must have altered the dates, the signatures. Made the evidence fit the story she needed. So the judge's new order. Is based on falsified documents Martha provided to the Cromwells, Sheriff Bradley confirmed. But here's the thing. Judge Morrison's no fool. She knows something smells wrong. That's why she issued the stay instead of just ruling for Cromwell. She's given us time to sort truth from lies. How much time? Mama asked. Hearing's set for tomorrow morning. You'll need to prove your claim is legitimate, that Jasper's deed was real, that you have legal right to excavate. He paused. Problem is, with Martha arrested, most of the evidence we had is now suspect. We're back to square one. Ray stood up slowly, and I saw something change in his face, a kind of certainty. Not quite square one. Jasper kept records, real ones, not altered. He didn't trust easily, and he always kept backups. He looked at Mama. Remember that metal box Elias found under the floorboards? Jasper's journal? Yeah, but that wasn't all he hid. Jasper told me once, if anything happened to him, if anyone tried to steal his research, I should look for the proof in the place where water and stone meet. I never understood what he meant. Ray's eyes went to the lake. Until now. The chest, I said. The one I saw through the ice. The one with his initials. Not just any chest. A document safe. Waterproof, fireproof, designed to preserve papers for decades. Ray grabbed Mama's shoulders. Clara, everything we need to prove your claim, the real deeds, the authentic records, probably even evidence of the Cromwell's crimes, it's all down there. Jasper put it where only someone willing to risk everything would find it. Mama looked at the court order, then at the lake where ice was breaking apart in great chunks. The stay says we can't excavate, she said slowly, but it don't say nothing about historical research. Sheriff Bradley caught her meaning and grinned. Research. Right. Perfectly legal to conduct underwater historical research on your own property. Tom, if we do this, if we go down there tonight, I'll be here to make sure nobody interferes with your academic pursuits, the sheriff said. And if the Cromwells show up anyway, well, I reckon that'd be violation of a restraining order. I'd have to arrest them. Ray was already hauling out the diving gear. We need to move fast. That ice won't hold much longer, and once it goes, the current will scatter everything. Mama turned to Rebecca and Timothy, who'd been listening from the doorway. You two stay inside, lock the doors. Don't open for anyone but us. Timothy grabbed Mama's hand with his twisted fingers. Mrs. Harlow, be careful. The lake says the bad men are coming soon, real soon. As if on cue, we heard it. Engines in the distance, coming closer. Sheriff Bradley pulled his rifle from the truck. That'll be the Cromwells. They must have heard about Martha's arrest, figured they better move now before we piece together the truth. Mama looked at Ray. How long to get down there and back? 30 minutes if everything goes perfect, hour if there's complications. Then we better hope for perfect. Mama started pulling on the wetsuit. Because I don't plan on giving those bastards another minute more than we have to. The engines were getting louder. I counted at least 4 vehicles, maybe 5. Ray checked the underwater lights, the breathing apparatus, the waterproof document bags. Clara, if we find what Jasper hid, if we get those real records, it'll prove everything. Your ownership, the Cromwell's fraud, Martha's betrayal, all of it. And if we don't find it, then we got nothing. And the Cromwells win by default. Mama pulled on Jasper's diving mask, the one he'd maintained so carefully, waiting for this moment. She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not fear, not anger, but absolute certainty. Elias, remember what I told you when we left Charleston? About how sometimes you gotta fight for what's right, even when you're scared? Yes'm. Well, I ain't scared anymore. Whatever happens down there, whatever we find or don't find, we'll face it together, as a family. She glanced at Rebecca and Timothy. All of us. Ray handed her the underwater camera. If we find documents, photograph everything before we bring it up. We'll need proof we didn't tamper with nothing. Headlights appeared through the trees, the Cromwells, arriving right on schedule. Sheriff Bradley chambered around. I'll hold 'em off as long as I can. But Clara, you better work fast, because I'm one man with one rifle, and they're bringing an army. Mama and Ray waded into the water, gasps escaping as the cold hit 'em. The ice had retreated to the center of the lake now, leaving open water near the shore. I stood on the bank watching 'em disappear beneath the surface, their lights fading into the black depths. Behind me, truck doors were slamming, men shouting, Marcus Cromwell's voice rising above the rest. "Sheriff, step aside. We got new evidence, new orders. This property's under legal dispute. And I got a restraining order says you stay 500 yards back," Sheriff Bradley called. "Now turn around and—" A gunshot rang out. Not from the sheriff, from the Cromwell's side. "Next one won't be a warning," Marcus Cromwell shouted. "We're taking what's ours, tonight, by force if necessary." I looked at the dark water where Mama had disappeared, then at Timothy hugging his mama in the cabin doorway, then at Sheriff Bradley facing down a dozen armed men with nothing but his courage and his rifle. And I understood. This was it. The moment that'd decide everything. Down below, Mama and Ray were searching for truth in the freezing dark. Up here, we were about to fight for the right to keep it. The ice groaned one final time, then shattered with a sound like the world breaking apart. The ice shattered like a gunshot, and the lake swallowed the last of winter whole. Sheriff Bradley and Marcus Cromwell's men stood frozen, not from cold, but from the sound of that ice breaking apart. For a moment, everyone forgot about guns and threats and $2 million in Confederate gold. We all just stared at the dark water where Mama and Ray had disappeared. "They're trapped under there," I whispered, fear clenching my chest. Then Timothy spoke, his voice strange and distant. "No, the lake's showing them the way. It's been waiting so long to give up its secrets. To the right people." Marcus Cromwell laughed, harsh and bitter. "The right people. Your mama's gonna drown down there, boy. And when we pull her body out, we'll pull out that treasure too. Either way, it's ours." That's when the first light appeared beneath the surface. Not Mama's diving lamp, something else, bigger, brighter, like the water itself was glowing from within. "What the hell?" one of Cromwell's men muttered. The light grew stronger, and we could see shapes moving beneath. Mama and Ray, but they weren't alone. Around them, the water was illuminating dozens of metal containers, scattered across the lake bottom like fallen stars. Not just the chest I'd seen, but barrels, strong boxes, sealed canisters, Morrison's entire cache revealed at once. And Mama and Ray were photographing everything, documenting it all before touching a single piece. "They found it," Sheriff Bradley breathed. "All of it." Mama surfaced first, gasping, holding a waterproof document case above her head. Ray came up beside her, carrying another. They swam toward shore, and Sheriff Bradley waded in to help them. Marcus Cromwell and his men surged forward, but the sheriff swung his rifle around. "I said stay back. That's our property," Marcus roared. "Actually," came a new voice, "it's evidence in a federal investigation." We all turned to see two men in suits climbing out of an unmarked car, FBI agents, badges flashing in the dawn light. "Special Agents Morrison and Chen," the taller one announced. "We've been investigating the Cromwell family's activities for 6 months. Money laundering, historical fraud, conspiracy to commit murder." He looked at Marcus. "Martha Hendris turned state's evidence an hour ago. Gave us everything. Your threats against Jasper Grayrock, your plans to use Confederate gold to fund white supremacist organizations, all of it." Marcus went white. "That's— you can't prove—" "We can now," Agent Chen said, pointing to the document cases Mama was carrying. "Thanks to Mrs. Harlow's discovery, those cases contain not just proof of ownership, but Jasper Grayrock's complete records, names, dates, recordings of threats. He documented everything, knew the Cromwells would come for him eventually." Ray helped Mama onto shore, both of them shaken from cold and exhaustion. Mama opened the first case with trembling hands. Inside were papers, pristine, perfectly preserved, deeds, transport manifests, and something else. A letter in Jasper's handwriting addressed, "To whoever finds this." Mama read it aloud, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "If you're reading this, I'm dead, and the Cromwells probably killed me. But I didn't die for nothing. In this case is proof of everything. My legal ownership, the Cromwells' crimes, and most important, the truth about this treasure. This gold was stolen from freed slaves in 1883. Morrison and Cromwell took it from black families trying to build new lives after the war, claimed it as Confederate assets. It ain't Southern heritage, it's theft, pure and simple. Whoever finds this, do what's right. Give it back to the people it was stolen from. The silence that followed was absolute. Mama looked at Marcus Cromwell, then at the FBI agents. He's right. This money needs to go back where it belongs, to the descendants of the people it was stolen from, to black colleges and historical societies, to truth, not lies. Clara, Ray started, but Mama shook her head. We got enough to live on from my share of the discovery. Finder's fee, legal salvage rights, Judge Morrison already ruled on that. But the bulk of it? She looked at the document case. It's blood money, and I won't profit from other people's suffering. Agent Morrison stepped forward. Mrs. Harlow, what's your suggestion? Donating the majority of a $2 million discovery ain't a suggestion. It's what's happening. Mama's voice was steel. My boy's gonna grow up knowing we did right, not that we got rich off stolen treasure. Marcus Cromwell fell to his knees in the snow, not from grief, from rage. His family's four-generation obsession ended, his foundation's dreams shattered. And worst of all, the treasure he'd killed for would go to the very people his organization sought to erase from history. You stupid woman, he whispered. You could have had everything. I do have everything, Mama said, pulling me close. I got my son, I got a home, and I got my dignity. She looked at the FBI agents. Take him away. 6 months later, we stood in the Smithsonian, watching folks file past the exhibit. The Dead Man's Hollow Discovery, the placard read. Confederate gold stolen from freed slaves, recovered and returned 1934. The display showed everything: Morrison's manifests, Jasper's research, photographs of the recovery, and prominently featured Clara Harlow and her son Elias, the widow and boy who chose truth over treasure. Timothy stood beside me, still leaning on his mama, but smiling. Ray had used some of Mama's finder's fee to get Timothy real medical treatment. Doctors in Charleston said with therapy, he might walk without braces someday. Rebecca worked at the Fairmont Library now, Martha's old job. Turned out knowledge and kindness ran deeper than betrayal. And Mama, she stood tall, talking to reporters about Jasper's legacy, about doing right when wrong pays better. Mrs. Harlow, one reporter asked, do you ever regret giving away $2 million? Mama looked at me, at Timothy, at the families of freed slaves who'd received reparations from the recovered gold. Not for 1 second, she said. Some things are worth more than money. Dignity, truth, the right to look your children in the eye and say you did what was right, not what was easy. The reporter scribbled notes. And what happened to Marcus Cromwell? 20 years federal prison, Mama said. Conspiracy, fraud, accessory to murder. His foundation was dissolved. His family's mining operations sold off to pay reparations. And Martha Hendress? House arrest 5 years. She's writing a book about her grandmother, the real story of Jay Morrison's widow, how she tried to return the stolen gold before Morrison hid it forever. Mama's smile was sad. Even betrayers can find redemption, given the chance. As the sun set through the museum windows, casting gold light across the exhibit, I felt Mama's hand squeeze mine. You know what Jasper wrote in his last letter? She asked quiet. What? The lake keeps secrets till it finds someone worthy of them. Someone who'll use what's hidden to heal, not hurt. I pray that person finds this before the wrong ones do. I looked at Mama, this woman who'd been called worthless, who'd nearly starved, who'd lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. He found the right person, I said. We found each other, Mama corrected. Me, you, Rebecca, Timothy, Ray, even Martha in her way. We all found what we needed in that frozen lake. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, first snow of the new winter. But it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something new, something true, something worth more than all the Confederate gold in the world. Present day, Elias speaking. That exhibit's still there, if you ever visit Washington, still drawing crowds, still teaching folks that history ain't just about who wins, it's about who tells the truth. Mama died 10 years back. peaceful in her sleep. Rebecca and Timothy scattered her ashes over Dead Man's Hollow, which ain't called that no more. State renamed it Gray Rock Lake after Jasper. The water don't seem cursed these days, just quiet, peaceful, like it finally gave up its secrets and can rest. I built a house there, same spot where our cabin stood. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear Mama's voice on the wind or see Jasper's shadow on the porch. But I ain't scared, because I learned something that winter of 34. Something Mama taught me through her choices. Dignity ain't about what you got. It's about what you won't sell. Justice ain't always swift, but it's always worth waiting for. And family ain't always blood. Sometimes it's just folks who choose to stand beside you when the world gets cold. That's the real treasure. That's what's worth more than gold. Present day, old Elias speaking to you directly. Now I'm gonna tell you something true. That winter of 34 taught me more about being human than all the years that followed. Taught me that when you got nothing left, no money, no home, no hope, that's when you find out who you really are. And who's willing to stand with you when the whole world's turned its back. Mama could have taken that 2 million and walked away, could have bought herself comfort, security, a life where nobody'd ever look down on her again. But she chose different. She chose truth over treasure, dignity over dollars, and doing right when wrong would have paid better. That's the thing about real strength. It ain't about what you can take. It's about what you won't compromise, what you refuse to sell, no matter the price. I learned family ain't always the folks you're born to. Sometimes it's the widow woman who takes in strangers during a blizzard, the crippled boy who sees truth others miss, the old hermit who spends 40 years protecting a secret so the wrong people won't profit from it, the librarian who betrays you, then finds redemption through honesty, families whoever chooses to stand in the cold with you, sharing what little warmth there is, and justice. Well, justice might move slow as molasses in January, but it's patient. It waits. And when it comes complete. If you've ever been told you don't matter because you're poor or different or crippled or just in the way of somebody powerful, I want you to know something. You matter. Your dignity matters. And no amount of gold is worth selling your soul. Mama used to say, Elias, we didn't find that treasure. It found us. Because sometimes the world needs specific people in specific places at specific times to set things right. I believe her. I believe the lake was waiting for someone like my mama, someone desperate enough to look, brave enough to fight, and principled enough to do the right thing when the easy thing was right there for the taking. So if this story touched you, wherever you're listening from, whether it's West Virginia or California or somewhere in between, remember this. Dignity ain't for sale. Justice might be slow, but it's worth waiting for. And family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who chooses to stand beside you when the winter gets cold and the world turns cruel. That's the treasure worth more than gold. That's what keeps us human when everything else tries to break us. Until next time, may your dignity carry you through the winter. May you always have the courage to do what's right when wrong pays better. And may you find family in the most unexpected places, because that's where the real fortune lies. Tell me where you're tuning in from, and if you got folks in your life who stood by you when times got hard, you let them know they're appreciated. Because that kind of loyalty, that kind of love, can't no amount of Confederate gold buy that. That's worth remembering.